Hi, I'm Ben Polson, the lead pastor at North Point in Hurst, Texas. And one of the great blessings in my time here has been to get to know the incredible impact of the New Beginnings Gospel Ministries that was started by Tong and Moy, along with their missionary network. For us, it started about 20 years ago when Tong and his family came to the seminary in Fort Worth and found North Point as their home. They became beloved and highly involved church members who were involved in many different ministries all around the church. Well, upon completing their studies, they followed the Lord's leadership to return to India despite many good opportunities to remain here. This meant uprooting their family from the home and lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to over the past decade. But God's will was their primary concern. North Point then became an avid sponsor of this ministry, and currently through our missions funds and gifts from individuals, we give tens of thousands of dollars a year and are always looking for ways to invest even more. So as I learned about all these things and met Tong on his fundraising trips and hearing the miraculous stories, I wanted to see it for myself. So in the spring of 2020, my family and two others from our church decided to go out on a scouting mission to see all that God was doing there in India. We were not adequately prepared for the amazing things that we would experience. You see, we traveled 17 hours to Delhi, then flew 3 more into Bhubaneswar. From there, we drove 8 hours to a remote village called Tarlangi. We here met missionary Lamboy and his wife Emily. When Lamboy came, there was no electricity or running water, and he didn't even know the local language. But he fought multiple bouts of malaria, and the village priest declared that he would die as well as anyone who associated with him. But God was faithful and used his healing to demonstrate his own power over sickness and his authority over the chief priest. Lamboy began to learn the language and began teaching the children in the village English as well as other subjects since their local teacher rarely showed up. Seeing his love for them and his humility, even adults began to listen, and the gospel began to take root. Over the next few years, his influence grew, and there were many more disciples made. And when he married Emily and she moved into the village, an even deeper impact was made, particularly with the death of their first child. You see, they saw the love and hope and joy despite also seeing the pain, and the gospel began to continue to flourish. When we arrived, Emily was 8 months pregnant with another child, and they gave up their beds for us, though I promise we begged them not to, but they would not have any of that. You see, the whole village also was incredibly happy to receive us, and we got to go into many of their homes to see how they lived. I was privileged to baptize new believers and hear their stories of accepting their new faith. But our main objective on this trip was to introduce the printed, written Gospel of John in the local language of Kutia. You see, Lamboy and a couple of others worked diligently to translate and edit this gospel. And this would be the first time in history that the gospel was available in written form to this language of over 100,000 natives. A celebration had been planned, and villages from all around, only accessible by small trails, were invited. Over 1,000 people showed up, many of whom had never even heard about Jesus. There was music and singing, cultural dances, gifts for the chiefs, and I was honored to preach the most basic gospel message from the book of John. They listened intently, and the seeds of the gospel were sown for Lamboy and his missionaries to follow up on and begin to cultivate a future harvest. After the ceremony, all the people got to enjoy free chicken, meat, and rice. It was quite a sight to see. In addition, families could register and receive a copy of the Gospel of John, and many began to read it right there. Sadly, we had to leave the following day, and we said, "See you next time," to our new friends. We traveled the 8 hours back to Bhubaneswar, then took a flight back to Delhi, where I got to preach at the church that Tong attends in Delhi. The next day, we loaded up for the 4-hour drive to Rajasthan. Here we had to be much more discreet, though, because the local Hindus are greatly in opposition to other religions. We met Loma, the director for this region, and his 2 kids. And at his house, I again got to baptize some new believers. However, this time it was in a very secret place in the back of the house in a 55-gallon drum. The following day, we rode tuk-tuks into the place where Tong, Moy, and others were beaten for sharing the gospel. It was quite sobering to be there with Tong returning to this spot. Yet he displayed incredible courage That I remember this look in his eyes and resolve that he would never give up on these people. The next few days we traveled all around Rajasthan, meeting many of the other church planners and many of their congregations as well. Everywhere we visited, we were offered refreshments and were greeted with the joy of the Lord. It is normal there to introduce each other or to greet each other with Jai Masiki. That means praise the Lord. So we began to do that same thing as we met fellow believers. Jai Masiki. All the missionaries in this area have specific regions they go out looking for sons of peace, as Jesus talked about in the book of Matthew. If they'd find a household of peace, they would go and they would teach and come back as often as possible to teach and eventually to establish a new church right there in the new little village or the new city there in Rajasthan. You see, Tongs missionaries only go to places where there's no current evangelical mission or evangelical work. They go and they're on the forefront of preaching the gospel in these areas. Our last night in Rajasthan, we went to the slums of Jejun City. And in this place, we were greeted again very warmly with believers and non-believers alike as we came into the place. You have to understand that with a caste system, someone like us, a foreigner, coming and wanting to spend time with them in the slums, that meant so much to them. And that's part of the message of the gospel is sharing. The gospel is for everyone. It's not exclusive. Anyone can receive this incredible gospel message. We were blessed to spend some time in worship and prayer with them before finally we had to return to Delhi and then have the long flight back to the United States. To sum it up, all I can say is, wow. Wow. This book of Acts level of ministry that they're doing right there and they're on the very forefront. And guess what? You can be a part of it too. I know sometimes you wonder about how funds are spent and when people are asking for money and things like this. I get that. I get asked and I get information all the time on these different things. But having seen it with my own eyes and been a part of what God is doing, all I can say is I have to do more to help this. I have to give more to be a part of this. And I would ask for you to consider the same thing. There's several ways, of course, to partner. Of course, you can pray. Please pray. Hey, please sign up for the newsletter. You can find it on our church webpage, npfam.com/India. Or you can sign up from there and receive monthly updates of everything God is doing through these missionaries. He doesn't have just missionaries there in Rajasthan and in Odisha. There's also a whole set in Nepal doing great work on the forefront. We just didn't have time to see that. You see, if you can do that, you can pray, that would be incredible. And they need your prayer support so greatly. But on top of that, if you just consider giving as well. You see, only $350 a month of new dollars coming in will support a new team of missionaries. $350 a month. That means if this church, your church right now that I'm talking to, could just think, you know what, 10 of us, 10 families, think of $35 a month. That's a whole new missionary team going toward the gospel. It may have never even been heard to people that don't know this name of Jesus. You can be a part of this. I cannot think of a better use of your resources. And all this ministry is funded by people just like you who recognize God's work and that He's doing incredible things around the world, specifically there in India through New Beginning Ministries. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I look forward to hearing from you in the future.